We're given such beautiful readings for this feast of St. James the Apostle. Yes, he was one of the two sons of Zebedee, James and John, and they were fishermen. We read that in the Gospel as well. And they must have had a pretty powerful mother. I would have died of embarrassment if my mother would go up to Jesus and make this kind of request. But it seems like they were ready to go along with her because they wanted those first places in the kingdom of heaven. Is that what it's about? Being more important, more special than the others? The other 10 were right to get upset at the two brothers because they weren't any more special. Jesus had called all of them, and Jesus loved all of them equally. And of course, this passage does foreshadow that James would share that cup of suffering of Jesus. He would die a martyr's death. That's why the vestments are red today, like most of the apostles. They shed their blood for Christ. And some of you have had the privilege to visit the tomb of St. James the Apostle at Santiago de Compostela in Spain, eh? Very special. The apostles, we're told, were being called to serve, not to seek special places in the kingdom, but to follow the example of Jesus. Yes, they would share even his cup of suffering. And that's because they would continue his work of spreading the good news in the face of persecution, rejection, and great suffering too. And no doubt they all learned the lesson that to be a follower of Jesus is not about making oneself more important or special than anyone, but to walk in the footsteps of the Master, who says it himself. He came down from heaven not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. I have to reread to you some of the words of the first reading from Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, because it tells us how the apostles' life would be. St. Paul is writing, "We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed." Yes, that was the life of the apostles. They would have to carry heavy crosses, burdens, suffering. But they kept the faith, eh? They were ready to die a martyr's death out of love for Christ, because that faith that they had received from Jesus was more precious than life itself, more precious than the suffering they had to endure. And there's a message for all of us, because like the apostles, our life can be like this too sometimes. If any of you have easy lives, God bless you. I'm a little bit jealous, because most of us don't always have easy lives. Exactly like the words of St. Paul. We're afflicted in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually even. But we're not crushed, because however great those burdens are, God is greater. Perplexed, confused, feeling lost, we don't despair, because we have our light, Jesus Christ. Persecuted, well, they're not throwing us into jail or throwing arrows at us, but we are persecuted because people laugh at us simply for going to church, for watching TV Mass, instead of watching the soap opera all day long. We're not forsaken. We're never forgotten or abandoned by Christ, our Savior. He's with us in all of those moments when people put us down, struck down, but not destroyed. Never forget, like the apostles, St. James and the others, we belong to Christ. We are precious to Christ, and Christ will not allow us to be lost, to be crushed or destroyed. And we have the hope that one day we'll share the glory of the apostles, where they and ultimately Christ have gone. We hope to follow. So like the apostles, let's keep the faith until the end, whatever it costs us, whatever heavy burdens we have to carry, whatever persecutions we have to suffer. Let's keep the faith. Let's never lose it. And at the end of the journey, we will have the reward of our faith, life without end, in the company of the apostles.